What's up, you guys? We're back in the basement. So listen. I guess Monday and Tuesday are PSATs. Cohort A is doing them on one day, and Cohort B is doing them on the other. So what that means is this video and the pages that we cover today in Fahrenheit 451, which by the way are 60 through 69, and the reading journals that go along with this section. That's going to cover both Monday and Tuesday, just the way things kind of work out with giving you guys an opportunity to take that PSAT, and on whatever day you're not doing that, well, you'll do this, all right? One thing that might be a little bit weird today as we read through these pages, we'll be moving from part 1 of the novel into part 2 of the novel. Don't worry, everything works just fine. And I'll stop throughout today's reading for reading journal breaks. All right, whether or not you do them when I suggest that you might, or whether you do them at the end, it really doesn't matter as long as they get done and submitted, so I can give you guys the points. And of course, it helps you keep up with the novel, which makes you helps you enjoy the class just a little bit more. So let's set the scene. So this is right after that groundbreaking part in the novel where we've been introduced to this Fahrenheit 451 society, and then Captain Beatty spells it all out to Guy Montag, and therefore, us, the readers, as well, of how this world came to be. And it hit me as just bananas. Like this isn't something that was being done to them so much as something they wanted done. But it may be just like so far, it may be at this point so far beyond their control, and because they're all a bunch of Mildred Montags, they don't realize how lousy things have gotten. You see how they were going for a utopia. Hey, let's make everybody happy, and we'll do that by making sure there's no real opinion on anything. And now, well, hooray, we're all happy. Are they? So we're going to jump into page 60, about a third of the way down the page, right after Captain Beatty walks out the door after giving his speech that you guys took the test on, went rather well. So that's where we're at, right? Page 60. Montag watched through the window as Beatty drove away in his gleaming yellow flame-colored Beetle with the black char-colored tires. Across the street and down the way, the other houses stood with their flat fronts. What was it Clarice had said one afternoon? No front porches. My uncle says there used to be front porches, and people sat there sometimes at night talking when they wanted to talk, rocking and not talking when they didn't want to talk. Sometimes they just sat there and thought about things, turned things over. My uncle says the architects got rid of the front porches because they didn't look well. But my uncle says that was merely rationalizing it. The real reason, hidden underneath, might be they didn't want people sitting like that, doing nothing, rocking, talking. That was the wrong kind of social life. People talked too much, and they had time to think. So they ran off with the porches, and the gardens too. Not many gardens anymore to sit around in. And look at the furniture. No rocking chairs anymore. They're too comfortable. Get people up and running around, my uncle says, and my uncle, her voice faded. Hey, I'm going to jump in here for just a second. With them talking about the porches like this, not too far off from reality. The furniture in fast food places like McDonald's and whatnot, it's designed to be comfortable short term. They don't want you there too long, so they don't make your seats too comfortable. That's like a real thing. You go ahead and Google it. I read it online. Top of page 61. Montag turned and looked at his wife, who sat in the middle of the parlor talking to an announcer, who in turn was talking to her. Mrs. Montag, he was saying this, that, and the other. Mrs. Montag, something else and still another. The converter attachment, which had cost him $100, automatically supplied her name whenever the announcer addressed his anonymous audience, leaving a blank where the proper syllables could be filled in. A special Spotwave X-scrambler also caused his televised image in the area immediately about his lips to mouth the vowels and consonants beautifully. He was a friend, no doubt of it, a good friend. Mrs. Montag, now look right here. Her head turned, though she quite obviously was not listening. Montag said, "It's only a step from not going to work today to not working tomorrow to not working at the firehouse ever again." "You are going to work tonight, though, aren't you?" said Mildred. "I haven't decided. Right now I've got an awful feeling I want to smash things and kill things." "Go take the Beetle." "No thanks. The keys to the Beetle are on the night table. I always like to drive fast when I feel that way. You get up around 95 and you feel wonderful. Sometimes I drive all night and come back and you don't know it. It's fun out in the country. You hit rabbits. Sometimes you hit dogs. Go take the Beetle." "No, I don't want to this time. I want to hold on to this funny thing. God, it's gotten big on me. I don't know what it is. I'm so damned unhappy. I'm so mad. And I don't know why I feel like I'm putting on weight. I feel fat. I feel like I've been saving up a lot of things and I don't know what. I might even start reading books. They'd put you in jail, wouldn't they?" She looked at him as if he were behind the glass wall. He began to put on his clothes, moving restlessly about the bedroom. "Yes, and it might be a good idea before I hurt someone. Did you hear, Beatty? Did you listen to him? He knows all the answers. He's right. Happiness is important. Fun is everything. And yet, I kept sitting there saying to myself, I'm not happy. I'm not happy." "I am," Mildred's mouth beamed, "and proud of it." "I'm going to do something," said Montag. "I don't even know what yet, but I'm going to do something big." "I'm tired of listening to this junk," said Mildred, turning from him to the announcer again. Montag touched the volume control on the wall, and the announcer was speechless. "Millie," he paused, "this is your house as well as mine. I feel it's only fair that I tell you something now. I should have told you before, but I wasn't even admitting it to myself. I have something I want you to see, something I've put away and hid during the past year, now and again, once in a while. I didn't know why, but I did it, and I never told you." He took hold of a straight-back chair and moved it slowly and steadily into the hall near the front door and climbed up on it and stood for a moment like a statue on a pedestal, his wife standing under him, waiting. Then he reached up and pulled back the grill of the air conditioning system and reached far back inside to the right and moved still another sliding sheet of metal and took out a book. Without looking at it, he dropped it to the floor. He put his hand back up and took out 2 books. He moved his hand out and dropped the 2 books to the floor. He kept moving his hands and dropping books, small ones, fairly large ones, yellow, red, green ones. When he was done, he looked down upon some 20 books lying at his wife's feet. We're going to stop there for a reading journal. The first entry for today's section is on the left. I took care of the left for you. Page 62 and 63, Montag was hiding 20-some books in the vents of his home. We know that. We just read that. And on the right, please answer this question. What does this suggest about how long he's been curious about these books? I mean, we saw just on the last fire call when he had done nothing. His hand had done it all. His hand grabbed that book. It almost seemed like maybe that was the first one, but apparently not. So give me a response to that question. If you want to pause this now to do that, okay. If you want to take care of this when we're done reading, you can do that too. Whatever works best for you, man. All right, back on 63. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't really think, but now it looks as if we're in this together. Mildred backed away as if she were suddenly confronted by a pack of mice that had come up out of the floor. He could hear her breathing rapidly, and her face was paled out, and her eyes were fastened wide. She said his name over, twice, 3 times. Then moaning, she ran forward, seized a book, and ran toward the kitchen incinerator. He caught her, shrieking. He held her, and she tried to fight away from him, scratching. "No, Millie, no, wait, stop it, will you? You don't know. Stop it." He slapped her face. He grabbed her again and shook her. She said his name and began to cry. "Millie," he said, "listen. Give me a second, will you? We can't do anything. We can't burn these. I want to look at them. At least look at them once. Then if what the captain says is true, we'll burn them together. Believe me, we'll burn them together. You must help me." He looked down into her face and took hold of her chin and held her firmly. He was looking not only at her, but for himself and what he must do in her face. "Whether we like it or not, we're in it. I've never asked for much from you in all these years, but I ask it now. I plead for it. We've got to start somewhere here. Figuring out why we're in such a mess. You and the medicine at night in the car, and me and my work. We're heading right for the cliff, Millie. God, I don't want to go over. This isn't going to be easy. We haven't anything to go on, but maybe we can piece it out and figure it and help each other. I need you so much right now I can't tell you. If you love me at all, you'll put up with this 24, 48 hours. That's all I ask. And then it'll be over. I promise. I swear. And if there is something here, just one little thing out of a whole mess of things, maybe we can pass it on to someone else." She wasn't fighting anymore, so he let her go. She sagged away from him and slid down the wall and sat on the floor looking at the books. Her foot touched one, and she saw this and pulled her foot away. "That woman the other night, Millie, you weren't there. You didn't see her face. And Clarice, you never talked to her. I talked to her. And men like Beatty are afraid of her. I can't understand it. Why should they be afraid of someone like her? I kept putting her alongside the firemen in the house last night, and I suddenly realized I didn't like them at all. And I didn't like myself at all anymore. And I thought maybe it would be best if the firemen themselves were burnt." "Guy!" The front door voice called softly. "Mrs. Montag, Mrs. Montag, someone here, Mrs. Montag, Mrs. Montag, someone here," softly. They turned to stare at the door, and the books toppled everywhere in heaps. "Beatty," said Mildred, "it can't be him. He's come back," she whispered. The front door voice called again softly. "Someone here. We won't answer." Montag lay back against the wall and then slowly sank into a crouching position and began to nudge the books bewilderedly with his thumb as forefinger. He was shivering, and he wanted above all to shove the books up through the ventilator again, but he knew he could not face Beatty again. He crouched, and then he sat, and the voice of the front door spoke again more insistently. Montag picked up a single small volume from the floor. "Where do we begin?" He opened the book halfway and peered at it. "We begin by beginning, I guess." "He'll come in," said Mildred, "and burn us and the books." The front door voice faded at last. There was a silence. Montag felt the presence of someone beyond the door, waiting, listening, and the footsteps going away, down the walk and over the lawn. "Let's see what this is," said Montag. He spoke the words haltingly and with a terrible self-consciousness. He read a dozen pages here and there and came at last to this. "It is computed that 11,000 persons have at several times suffered death rather than submit to break eggs at the smaller end." Mildred sat across the hall from him. "What does it mean?" "It doesn't mean anything. The captain was right." "Here now," said Montag. "We'll start over again. At the beginning." All right. Page 67 begins part 2 of the novel called The Sieve in the Sand, and we will get to explaining the title of this second part soon, but not today. They read the long afternoon through while the cold November rain fell from the sky upon the quiet house. They sat in the hall because the parlor was so empty and gray-looking without, its walls lit with orange and yellow confetti and skyrockets and women in gold mesh dresses and men in black velvet pulling 100-pound rabbits from silver hats. The parlor was dead, and Mildred kept peering in at it with a blank expression as Montag paced the floor and came back and squatted down and read a page as many as 10 times aloud. "We cannot tell the precise moment when friendship is formed, As in filling a vessel drop by drop, there is at last a drop which makes it run over. So in a series of kindnesses, there is at last one which makes the heart run over. Montag sat, listening to the rain. Is that what it was in The Girl Next Door? I've tried so hard to figure. She's dead. Let's talk about someone alive, for goodness sake. Montag did not look back at his wife as he went trembling along the hall to the kitchen, where he stood a long time watching the rain hit the windows before he came back down the hall in the gray light, waiting for the tremble to subside. He opened another book. That favorite subject, myself. He squinted at the wall. That favorite subject, myself. I understand that one, said Mildred. But Clarice's favorite subject wasn't herself. It was everyone else, and me. She was the first person in a good many years I've really liked. She was the first person I can remember who looked straight at me as if I counted. He lifted 2 books. These men have been dead a long time, but I know their words point one way or another to Clarice. Outside the front door in the rain, a faint scratching. Montag froze. He saw Mildred thrust herself back to the wall and gasp, "Someone, the door... Why doesn't the door voice tell us?" I shut it off. Under the door sill, a slow probing sniff, an exhalation of electric steam. Mildred laughed. "It's only a dog, that's what. You want me to shoo him away? Stay where you are." Silence, the cold rain falling, the smell of blue electricity blowing under the locked door. "Let's get back to work," said Montag quietly. Mildred kicked at a book. "Books aren't people. You read and I look around, but there isn't anybody." We stared at the parlor that was dead and gray as the waters of an ocean that might teem with life if they switched on the electric sun. "Now," said Mildred, "my family is people. They tell me things. I laugh, they laugh. And the colors? Yes, I know. And besides, if Captain Beatty knew about those books..." She thought about it. Her face grew amazed and then horrified. "He might come and burn the house and the family. That's awful. Think of our investments. Why should I read? What for?" "What for? Why?" said Montag. "I saw the damnedest snake in the world the other night. It was dead, but it was alive. It could see, but it couldn't see. You want to see that snake? It's at emergency hospital where they filed a report on all the junk the snake got out of you. Would you like to go and check their file? Maybe you'd look under Guy Montag, or maybe under Fear or War. Would you like to go to that house that burnt last night and rake ashes for the bones of the woman who set fire to her own house? What about Clarice McClellan? Where do we look for her? The morgue? Listen!" The bombers crossed the sky and crossed the sky over the house, gasping, murmuring, whistling like an immense invisible fan circling in emptiness. And that is where we're going to stop for today. All right, we're going to stop right there. And now I have 2 reading journals entries for you. All right. For the next one, I note that on pages 67 through 69, both Guy and Mildred start to read. Granted, it definitely looks like Guy is trying a little bit harder than Mildred. So take a look at the right-hand side, and please comment on the very different approaches to reading between Guy and Mildred. In other words, what is Guy looking to accomplish with reading? How does he feel about reading now? As opposed to, how does Mildred feel about reading? What does she hope to get out of this? Or what? With the next entry, I want you to finish both of these sentences. I put one on each side. Okay, on the left-hand side, I want you to finish this sentence. "The best I can figure, what happened to Clarice is that..." That's Charlie Brown teacher voice. I'm not using it with permission. I hope the estate of Charles Schultz does not sue me. And then on the right, "If I were Guy Montag, I could go to find out more information about what happened to Clarice by..." Where do you go? Where do you go? All right, so finish up both those sentences for that reading journal. And when you're done with that, you're going to be done with today's reading journal. And tomorrow, Wednesday, because remember, this is going to cover both Monday and Tuesday because of the PSATs. On Wednesday, I'll start by going over today's reading journals. All right, so don't forget to get them done, get them submitted. I'd love to give you the points, and it helps keep you up with the reading so you enjoy the class more. All right, I'm going to scoot out of here. Y'all know where I work. Mr. C's out of the basement.